Shalom, I'm Chaim Ben Pesach from the Jewish Task Force, J.T.F. On this week's program, we're going to discuss how Vice President J.D. Vance defends outright Nazis. Because we've already exposed on many of our programs that we've been doing over the years how the Democrat Party is thoroughly anti-Semitic, anti-Israel, wants the Jews dead. That's what the Democrat Party stands for. Vicious Jew-hating party. But we see that even in the Republican Party, the cancer of anti-Semitism and of hatred of God's people exists in the Republican Party as well, and why Jews have to wake up and have to understand that Israel is isolated. This is what the Bible said we would have, and we will win anyway. God will protect Israel. Israel will win anyway. We're going to discuss how that's going to happen and what the consequences are for America because of this. But before we get to all of that, this program is dedicated to a refuah shlema, complete recovery for Shlomo ben Sarah, Ruth bat Sarah, Dorit bat Sarah, Ruven ben Shoshana, and Ashedina bat Violet. And to Ilui Neshamot, elevating of the souls for Sharon Mitman, Malka bat Meir, Allegra bat Shlomo, Daniel Nankin, Victor Chazdai, Pesach Ben Dov, Lunita Adler, Shifra Hoffman, Ruven Hoffman, Barry Hoffman, Harab Mir Kahana, Harab Binyamin Kahana, Tzipora Fegi, Bat Liba, Yosef Ben Meir, Robert Mittman, Dennis Shore, Helen Friedman, Charles Zolat, Yair Levine, Rachel D., and David Ben Avraham. Now, we've exposed the vicious anti-Semitism of the Democrat Party, and you have to be blind not to see that the Democrat Party hates the Jews, and the Jews in the Democrat Party hate Israel and hate their own people. Sick, self-hating Jews. And by the way, one thing that confuses people, why are there so many self-hating Jews? Why do so many Jews work against Israel and hate Israel and support people like Zoran Mamdani, who openly wants to destroy Israel and is a Muslim terrorist? Why do so many Jews support this evil, monstrous insanity? They're going against their own people. And the answer is really very simple. The whole world has been against the Jews for thousands of years, in every generation. The whole world hates the Jews. There are exceptions. There are righteous Gentiles in every country that aren't part of that, but they're a distinct minority. Most of the world hates the Jews and is always against the Jews no matter what the Jews do. And so the Jews look at this and they say, the whole world's against us. Let's be realistic. We got to be practical. Let's be practical. Let's join them. And maybe then they won't bother us. Maybe then they won't want to murder us. This is the mentality. In other words, they join with their enemies in order to try to save their own necks. That's what you're dealing with when you talk about self-hating Jews. And that really is what is behind the phenomenon of these self-hating Jews like Bernie Sanders and J.B. Pritzker and Schmuck Schumer and Dan Goldman and all these other self-hating Jewish vermin, this scum. They will work to destroy their own people in order, basically, in the back of their minds, what really is what they're really aiming for is to save themselves and to advance themselves at the expense of their own people. And so this is what we have. But the problem is Jews think that there are some Jews who realize the Democrat Party is anti-Semitic. There are some Jews who finally have come to that realization, but they think, well, at least the Republicans support us. No, you live in a fantasy world. The vice president, Donald Trump's vice president, J.D. Vance, is an anti-Semite. J.D. Vance, who refused to condemn the young Republican chat group. There was a chat group of young Republicans, where, among other things, they said in the chat group, quote, "Great, I love Hitler," unquote. And they were talking about putting Jews in gas chambers and open Nazism. And these were young Republicans, okay, who had positions on the staffs of senators and Republican senators, Republican congressmen in the Republican National Committee. leading young Republicans who were supposed to be the future stars of the Republican Party. And when this was exposed, you had certain Republican senators and leaders who condemned it and who said we can't tolerate this, and many of the people who were involved in this chat group were fired from their positions. That bothered J.D. Vance, the vice president. He said, "We're going to ruin people's lives over a chat group just because they said they love Hitler and that they want to put Jews in gas chambers. We're going to ruin somebody's life over that and fire them." To him, it was no big deal that they said this. That's what he was arguing publicly. Privately, I think he agrees with them. And so J.D. Vance, he is always there to defend the Nazis. Whenever there are Nazis, he will be there to defend them. And he'll say, if you're against the Nazis, you're against free speech. You're against, as supporting Nazism is supporting free speech. And by the way, Nazis, let me make something very clear. Nazis do not have the right to free speech. They have no rights. None. Nazis have no rights. Nazis deserve what they want to do to the Jewish people. They deserve to have happened to them. They have zero rights. And Vance also has expressed support for the new Nazi parties in Germany, France, Britain. Whenever a Nazi party springs up, full of Holocaust deniers and other people who try to glorify Nazi Germany and the Third Reich, when that happens, J.D. Vance is there saying, you should do nothing to try to stop them. They have a right to run in the elections, and they should be elected, and what they're saying is good, and he defends them and praises them. I mean, literally, parties of Holocaust deniers, of vicious Nazi lovers and defenders of Hitler, and J.D. Vance is their number one defender. And let's remember who urged Donald Trump to select J.D. Vance. Who urged Donald Trump to pick J.D. Vance as vice president? Who were the people who really pushed hard for him to pick J.D. Vance? Tucker Carlson. He led the campaign to have J.D. Vance selected as Trump's vice president. And J.D. Vance is still good friends with Tucker Carlson and campaigns with Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson, who invites outright Nazis, outright Hitlerian Nazis on his program and defends them and praises them. For instance, Tucker Carlson invited Nick Fuentes on his program. Nick Fuentes is a Mexican who thinks he's an Aryan. He's a little confused. He's a Mexican, Senor Nick Fuentes, who's a Mexican, but he thinks he's an Aryan. And he has said, among other things, that Hitler was, quote, very, very cool, unquote. He said that he supports Kanye West for president. Kanye West, who has said Kanye West has said that he loves Hitler and loves the Nazis. And that's who Nick Fuentes supports for president. And Tucker Carlson is invited. And Tucker Carlson, by the way, was very nice to Nick Fuentes and was astonished that anybody would be against what Nick Fuentes is standing for. Tucker Carlson was amazed. Why would anybody be against this? Just because he supports Hitler? Just because he supports the Holocaust? Just because he talks about how we have to work to destroy world Jewry? That's something to be so amazed about. Perfectly legitimate positions, according to Tucker Carlson. And Nick Fuentes, though, is not the only guest on Tucker Carlson's program. Tucker Carlson's program also has another guest who is good friends with Tucker Carlson named J.D. Vance. By the way, Nick Fuentes, to show how sick these Nazis are, all these Nazis are sick people, there's no question about it. I mean, Adolf Hitler was a sick person. I mean, these were mentally deranged individuals, but a country becomes insane. There are periods in history when all of Germany became insane. Or Germany, Austria, all these other countries that worshipped Hitler. Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, Ukraine, Croatia. They all backed Hitler. Hungary, they backed Hitler, all of these countries. Romania, they all backed Hitler, who was a madman. But these countries became insane. Countries become insane. Countries, sometimes a whole people can become crazy. Mass schizophrenia or mass psychosis. These things happen. And Nick Fuentes is an example, by the way, of complete insanity. He's insane on every level. He says, for instance, Nick Fuentes says, for instance, having sex with women is gay. He doesn't think having sex with men is gay. He thinks that's okay. But he thinks that having sex with women, that's gay. He says he would never have sex with women. Ugh, that's to him, that's disgusting. But having sex with men, he thinks that's all right. But having sex with women is gay. That's what he said. Real gay is having sex with women, he said. For a man to have sex with women, that's gay, he said. Right out of a mental asylum. I mean, right out of a complete mental asylum, this guy. And he's taken so seriously and so respected by Tucker Carlson and the Heritage Foundation, which was once a highly respected conservative foundation. The head of the Heritage Foundation is defending Tucker Carlson for inviting Nick Fuentes, Senor Nick Fuentes, who thinks he's a Nazi Aryan and who wants to be the next Hitler, inviting this on his program. And the head of their Heritage Foundation defends Tucker Carlson and defends this decision. And how many Jews gave money to the Heritage Foundation? And how many Jews give money to all of these causes which wind up being anti-Semitic causes and causes of Nazis who hate us? Jews should give nothing to any of these political causes or political groups. The money should go to the heroic Hilltop youth in Israel, to our people who are struggling to survive and who are pushing God's message to the Jews and to the righteous Gentiles of the world. That's where the money should go. Now, Donald Trump, you may say, well, how can Donald Trump tolerate this? He's so pro-Israel. He's not pro-Israel in the least. Do you know that he's now sponsoring a resolution in the UN, before the UN Security Council, calling for the creation of a Palestinian state? Did you know that? Donald Trump is doing that. Did you know that Donald Trump arrogantly said that I will decide what Israel does? That's a quote, by the way. I will decide what Israel does. Israel is not going to annex Judea and Samaria, her biblical heartland. Israel's not allowed to have her own biblical heartland. Judea and Samaria. Tiny little Israel can't even keep the land that she has, according to Donald Trump. No, I will decide, he said, because Trump is corrupt and he's involved with dirty deals with Saudi Arabia and the Persian Gulf countries for his own personal family businesses. And he is involved with that up to his neck. And I mean, is Trump preferable to the Democrats? Is he preferable even to J.D. Vance? Yes, he's better than the Democrats. He's not as bad as J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance is vice president. I dread to even think of what J.D. Vance would be doing now if J.D. Vance were president. And J.D. Vance, he visited Israel to pressure Israel to agree to a suicidal deal in Gaza. He also went to Israel to pressure Israel, together with two self-hating Jews, Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and then Steve Witkoff. Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, two Jews who both have multi-billion-dollar deals with the Persian Gulf oil trillionaires. With all the Persian Gulf countries, they rescued the businesses, the personal businesses of Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, and so they now are involved in trying to get Israel to commit suicide because it's good for their personal business. They'll gladly see 7 million Israeli Jews be exterminated, God forbid. They'll allow another Holocaust to take place as long as it's good for their bottom line. That's Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff. And it's also Donald Trump and his whole family. His whole family is corrupt. He's corrupt. His whole family's corrupt. That's just the reality. And he is the best of what we have compared to the Democrats. He's better than the Democrats, which is why we urged you to vote for him, and we supported him. And the Democrats are certainly much worse. But Vance, he went to Israel also to tell Israel, to try to pressure Israel to commit suicide. And when a bill was passed calling for an annexation of a small portion of Judea and Samaria, just a small portion of the Jordan Valley, just a little slice of Judea and Samaria, Vance said he was insulted that this was even suggested. He said it was a stupid political stunt. We're going to tell Israel what to do, he said. And this is a the arrogance of these people. The arrogance of these people. Donald Trump and J.D. Vance and America and Europe and all the nations of the world and Netanyahu are only flesh and blood. Okay? They're going against God's plan. God's plan is for the Jews to liberate all the land from the Nile to the Euphrates. That's what God promises in the Bible. That's God's plan. And eventually that's going to happen. Long after J.D. Vance and Donald Trump and Netanyahu, who's also a traitor, and all of these, and all the European Nazi leaders, after they're all gone, long after they're all gone, Israel will be ruling over not only Judea and Samaria, will rule over all the land from the Nile to the Euphrates. Because that's what it says will happen in the Bible, and what it says in the Bible is what's going to happen, not what Donald Trump says. Even though he says he will decide, he won't decide a damn thing. God is the one who decides in the end. And by the way, remember, J.D. Vance grew up in Kentucky, in Kentucky, Ohio, rural evangelical Christian areas. So he should have been an evangelical Christian. That's what you would think. But he's an evil person. And so he converted to Catholicism, the anti-Semitic religion that has massacred Jews for 2,000 years. That's the religion that ordered the Inquisition, that ordered the Crusades, where tens of thousands of Jews were massacred in the Crusades. Tens of thousands where crusaders went and cut the babies out of pregnant women's stomachs, cut into their stomachs and cut the babies out. These are the people who claim to be pro-life, by the way. These are the people that packed Jews into synagogues and burned men, women, and children, thousands of them, and burned the synagogues to the ground, dancing around the synagogues, singing, "Christ, we adore thee." That was the Crusaders. And the church also ordered later on, centuries later, ordered the Inquisition. The Holy Grand Inquisition. It was ordered by the Vatican and by the Pope. That's the Inquisition, where thousands of Jewish men, women, and children in Spain, Portugal, Italy, even Brazil, it even came to the Western Hemisphere, where thousands of Jewish men, women, and children were burned alive. Were told, you either convert to Catholicism or we're going to burn you alive. And they were tortured, and they were tortured in the worst way possible, and then burned alive at the stake. And they recited their prayers while they were being burned. Many stories of the heroic Jews who went to the stake and before they were burned, they said, "Shema Yisrael, Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one," said the prayer of the Jewish people heroically. Men, women, and children. This is what really happened to our people in Spain, in Portugal, in Italy, in Brazil. This is why we have a Jewish people today, because of Jewish heroes like that. It's because of them that we survived as a nation against all odds. When empires and people many, many times bigger and stronger than us have faded into history thousands of years ago, and the Jewish people live on and have returned to their homeland. And long after all the popes and Vaticans and Vatican City and all the other converted Catholics like J.D. Vance are gone, long after they're gone, Israel will live on, because God promises that. And God is the one who will decide. Not Donald Trump, not J.D. Vance, not the Democrats, not Schmuck Schumer, not the UN, not the European Union. God will decide in the end what happens. And God says in the Bible, "I will bless them that bless thee and curse them that curse thee," and says this is an eternal covenant, and he warns the nations of the world not to go against Israel. But he says, and the prophecies clearly say, Bilam, says in his prophecy in the Torah. He says, Am levadad yishkonu vagoyim lo yitchashav. Lo, this is a nation that shall dwell alone and not be reckoned among the nations. Israel will not be reckoned among the nations. The nations will be against Israel. Everyone will be against Israel. And Israel will still survive and defeat all of her enemies, and her enemies will be destroyed, and she will survive. Not only that, the Jews and the righteous Gentiles who choose the right path will have Chayei Netzach, will have eternal life. Those that go against Israel, of course, have no chance of ever achieving eternal life. They're going to face a very, very dreadful judgment in the next world. And all of life is a test for the Jews and for the Gentiles. For the Jews, are you going to remain faithful to your mission as a people, to what God has commanded you to do, to your destiny as a light unto the nations and a holy nation, a nation of priests? You're going to remain loyal to that. And for the Gentiles, are you going to support the Jews in that mission and push for what God commands in the Bible? That's the test. That's the number one test in life for all of us. And of course, the vast majority of humanity fails that test. And many, many Jews fail that test. And so this is where we stand. And the answer is, well, what do we do now? What do you do? What do you propose? Jews, wake up. Jews, we are alone. Now, we have some righteous Gentiles in nations of the world that support us. Wonderful. And God will bless them, and they will have a very, very great reward in the next world together with the righteous Jews. But let's understand something. The nations of the world, the leaders in the nations of the world will always be against Israel. They will be against us. God has created this situation where the nations of the world, the evil people are going to be in charge. They're the majority. They're going to be against us. And there's a reason for it. The reason for it is because when all the nations of the world are against Israel and Israel's all alone, and little Israel wins in spectacular, miraculous, breathtaking victories in 6-day wars. The whole Arab world attacked Israel in 1967, and in 6 days, Israel beat the living daylights out of the whole Arab world, outnumbered 100-1. In 6 days, Israel quadrupled in size. When that happens, when Israel's all alone and does that, it's a Kiddush Hashem, it's sanctifying God's name. Then people see, wow, this is, I know, I personally witnessed evangelical Christians who believed in God and believed in the Bible because of what happened to Israel in that war, and because they saw God's hand in that war, even though Christianity is not the true religion. And I'm not going to get into a discussion here about, we, of course, on this program, we believe in Judaism. Christianity is not the true religion. But if people want to believe, if a Jew believes in Christianity, he's a traitor. But if a Gentile believes in Christianity, wants to believe in Christianity, I'm not going to get into why Judaism is the true religion, and we do not see converts. By the way, Judaism only says to the Gentiles that you have to follow the 7 mitzvot, Sheva mitzvot b'nei Noach, that you have to follow the 7 commandments of the children of Noah. You have to follow those 7 commandments, which are basically to lead a decent, moral, good life. That's all Judaism demands out of the Gentiles. And of course, you have to support Israel. But you support Israel and you lead a good, decent life, moral life. That's all Judaism demands out of the Gentiles. If Gentiles do that, they have eternal life. The Jews have a much tougher. The Jews have 613 commandments. They have much more that they have to follow. Now, most of the 613 commandments don't involve the average Jew. They involve the Holy Temple and laws of kings and laws of judges and laws involving prophets and all types of things that an average Jew on an average day will have a certain number of laws that he has to follow. But, it's not hundreds of laws by any means. It's much less than that. But anyway, the Jews have certain things that they have to follow. The Gentiles have certain things that they should be following. And if people do follow it and people do what is right, the reward is tremendous. If not, the punishment is tremendous. Now, we have to have an Israel that is ready to go alone when the time comes, when Israel will be completely isolated. Okay? Because J.D. Vance will probably be the Republican nominee for president in 2028. And the Democrat nominee we know is going to be anti-Semitic. All the Democrat candidates and and the whole Democrat Party is anti-Semitic and anti-Israel. So the Democrats we know are against Israel and against the Jews. And the Republican is probably also going to be an anti-Semite, J.D. Vance. So we don't win. We're no matter what we do, we lose in that election. And so Israel has to be ready to go it alone. That doesn't mean there won't be trade. Israel will have trade with dozens of countries. Israel will be able to do all types of have all types of relationships, economic and otherwise, with all types of countries. That would continue. But they won't get the so-called foreign aid, which they shouldn't be getting anyway. It's no good for Israel. It's poison. It's a poison pill. Okay? The $3.8 billion that the United States gives Israel every year, which, by the way, is not a large part of the American foreign aid bill. Not at all, even though the anti-Semites always say, foreign aid to Israel, foreign aid, is a very small part of what America shells out to all of these countries. What Israel gets is a very small amount. But still, that $3.8 billion is used to blackmail Israel. It is not good for Israel. And it keeps Israel artificially dependent when Israel can easily be independent. So Israel eventually will not get that foreign aid. And Israel eventually will have to build her own weapons. She's not going to get weapons deliveries from the United States. Israel, again, is very capable of building her own weapons. Most of the weapons America has been built by Jewish scientists and Jewish brains. Yes, most of America's weaponry, most of America's technological advances have been at the hands of Jews, Jewish scientists and Jewish brains. So Israel, a nation of Jews, 7 million Jews, you can imagine what little Israel can create, even though they have a much smaller country, much smaller budget, all types of limitations, but still they have the power, they have Jewish brain power, which God gave them. Okay, which is one of the proofs of the truth of the Bible, that the Jews are a special people, because God made it that way. God made sure that the Jews would have the tools necessary to go it alone. The sooner Israel and the Jews wake up to this and prepare themselves, the better it will be for Israel and for the world. And the one group that stands up against a so-called Palestinian state, which would be suicide for Israel if there was a so-called, first of all, there's no such thing as Palestine, there's no such thing as Palestinians. But the one thing, the one group that really is standing up against them, really standing up against them, as we've explained many times before on other programs, are the Hilltop youth. The heroic Hilltop youth, we have to support them. We have to get as many Jews in Judea and Samaria as possible, because the more Jews we put there on those hilltops, the more heroic Hilltop youth that we get, and the more we support the Hilltop youth, the more difficult it is to shove a so-called Palestinian state down Israel's throat. So it's essential that we support the Hilltop youth. There is no cause more important for the Jews or for the righteous Gentiles in this world than supporting the heroic Hilltop youth. Here's how you support them. You can go to if you want to do it online, you go to our Hebrew main page, hayamin.org, and you click on the donate button. There's a donate button in English on top. You click on the donate button, and you can easily and conveniently donate. And you can make recurring monthly donations, or you can make one-time donations, or you can make both. Just take you a few minutes. Just a few minutes you have a little bit of a wait, few minutes, and at the end of a few minutes, you've done something very good and very important. That's if you want to do it online. If you want to do it through the regular mail, you send checks and money orders made out to J.T.F., and you send it to J.T.F. P.O. Box 650327, Fresh Meadows, New York 11365. And of course, you should leave J.T.F. in your will. Leave a generous portion of your will to J.T.F. so you leave this world a better place. There's no cause more important than the heroic Hilltop youth. If you leave Jewish Task Force, J.T.F. in your will, with our address, and make sure that that they will get in touch with us when the time comes. If you do that, you're doing something that will help you more than it'll help the Hilltop youth. You'll be helping yourself even more than you help the Hilltop. You're helping the Hilltop youth. Someday you'll see that what I'm telling you is true. And if you are a Jew with means, a really wealthy Jew with means, we need substantial support. And if you can help, and if you can get your friends in the business world or your associates who also are people of means, if you know people of means, if you can get them to support us, let's do a Zoom fundraising. Let's do a Zoom conference where we fundraise for the Hilltop Youth. Let's do that, okay? Or if you prefer, instead of doing it online, if you prefer to do it in your home, if you want to have a parlor. A parlor party in your home or a cocktail party or a parlor meeting in your home, whatever you prefer, whatever will get the results for the Hilltop youth, that's what we should be doing. The real question here in the end is, do you stand for justice and righteousness and truth? Because I think deep down, you know that what we're saying here is true. Do you stand for justice and truth and righteousness? And do you believe in God and believe in the Bible and believe in the historic comeback of the Jewish people to their land, how important this is? And do you want to be a part of this, of making this most important development in history, more important than anything else that's happening in the world? Do you want to be a part of it? That's the real question. Again, in the end, there's no doubt that the forces of good will win. The question is, will we play a role? Will each of us individually play a role in helping the forces of good win? That is the question that will decide our personal destiny in this world and in the next. For J.T.F. until next week, this is Chaim ben Pesach. Shalom.